I call the meeting, oh, very good. I call the meeting of Falmouth Public Schools to order for August 17th, 2021. Per Governor Baker's orders suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, the public will not be allowed to physically assess the school committee meeting, but it can be viewed live on FCTV Channel 14. A recording of this meeting can also be viewed on the district's YouTube. I would like to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded. If any member of the public would like to make an audio or video recording of this meeting, please notify me by raising their hand, and I will notify the public for the Massachusetts public meeting laws. Do we have anyone who's making a recording this evening? I see one hand. Okay, Mackenzie Ryan. Hi, Mackenzie from the Enterprise. Thank you, Mackenzie. Good evening. We are joined this evening by Falmouth's health agent, Scott McGann, and pediatrician, Dr. Greg Parkinson, and of course, the Superintendent Dorr. Before I turn the meeting over to the superintendent, I would like to share the plan for this evening. Scott and Greg will give brief presentations, followed by a period of comments or questions from the audience. We want to hear from as many people as possible, so all comments are to be limited to 2 minutes in length. And Melissa, if you could keep track of that, I'd appreciate it. Awesome, thank you. No action will be taken by the school committee this evening. However, next Tuesday, the school committee will vote on a policy for the upcoming school year. I know that many people have strong opinions on the subject of masking, so I would like to remind everyone that comments are to be respectful. We have a lot to cover in the next hour, so without further ado, I turn it over to Lori.
Thank you, Natalie. And because we want to leave as much time as possible, I would like to just move right into brief discussions from Scott and from Dr. Parkinson. So Scott, our Falmouth health agent.
Hi, I'll try to be brief. I'm not known for my briefness, but I'll try my best. I'm going to share screen. I think the best way to start out with this is to just give you a lowdown. We haven't done a presentation for a while, where we're at, and a little bit of my thoughts. Are you seeing my screen okay? So we know that Delta's here, and our case counts in June and July looked really good. It was fizzling out. Come mid-July, these cases are Delta. You start seeing an increase. We've been averaging for the last 4 weeks about 20 cases per day, and there's also some probables mixed in, so figure about 25 or so a week, okay? Probables are rapid antigen test versus a PCR. This week, we're right at 10, so we're kind of in the same mode of where we were those 3 previous weeks. Our current case count is 1,660, that's PCR-only tests. In terms of our vaccination rates are great. I mean, we are 86% of all eligible residents have had at least 1 dose, with 78 of all eligible fully vaccinated. Since we're doing a school presentation, I thought I'd put a big red box around where we're at for those that are 12 to 19, because that's how the state breaks it down, which comes out to roughly 1,440 plus or minus individuals between that age group, around 61 to 62% vaccination rate among that group. Obviously, the vaccination before the age of 12 is 0, because it's not eligible at this point in time. So your vaccination rate is much lower than the general population, mainly, obviously, because it's only for 12 to 18-year-olds. In terms of how we're doing as a county, you've heard some things about the county being a substantial to a high risk. Any one particular town would trigger the entire county. You see the Provincetown, Truro, Wellfleet area has had more cases. You know, if you look at where we are in Falmouth, I'll give you more specifics in a second. We're at 9.2, so sort of where the Mid Cape and Upper Cape is. You know, Provincetown's, you know, about 60 miles away, and it's about as relevant as Attleboro. You know, I mean, if you do the circle around it, is it really relevant for us? I'd be looking more about Mid Cape, Yarmouth over to be more of an indicator. That's tends to where we go to work and we drive, and we sort of intermix more Mid Cape, Upper Cape. So that's kind of where we are with cases. I talk about where we are with masks. We have a mask advisory. We've had a mask advisory since the end of the governor's requirements on May 29th. We are advising people to continue to wear their masks indoors. And we've had that in place. I have had a lot of requests for mandates. I've had people ask me not to do mandates. I'll tell you where we're at on the mandates for the general population, and I'll make comments about school. So in the absence of state guidance, it's always a lot easier for a health agent. We just finished a call a couple hours ago with the state, which, I was quite vocal on the lack of sort of information or the lack of sort of decision making there. But they're sort of leaving it up to us. So what I've done is the CDC has a decision making, it was from the weekly morbidity and mortality report on when to start implementing measures. And they use the indicators of the disease, which is the top column. They use hospitalizations, and they use your vaccination rates. So let's look at Falmouth. So our 14-day is 9.2 out of 100,000, which is considered low. Our 14-day, that's our incident rate. Sorry, that's the number of people in the past 7 days that have gotten it per 100,000. The percent positivity looks at the total number of tests and total number of people that are becoming positive. So if you look at what P-Town, Provincetown was high, they were definitely over 10 and greater than 100 per 100,000. So Falmouth is currently in the low. Our hospitalizations we've been holding steady with hospitalizations. I do get that report. I don't get that report on a daily basis. I get this from an email that we get from Barnstable County. The hospitalizations are not been, and we've seen that in the state, not have gone up, because we're vaccinated. And like I said before, our vaccination rates have been robust. I think I need to update that with the chart that's above. So going back to the advisory, we do have a mask advisory. I would advise you to wear a mask or to have masks on indoors. You also have a lower vaccination rate by the chance that you do have a lot of children, and you have those about 60, like I said, 61% seem to be about right in that 12 to 18 years. So, I would extend that, and I would advise you to require, masks indoors for those particular reasons. It's not the general population that has a higher vaccination rate. Yes, the children are less likely to show severe disease, but we do see it going through. There does go through the household pretty good. It does go. We are seeing. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm seeing more children, but we do have daycare centers that have cases and things like that. So it does happen. The Delta variant is much stronger in its ability to spread from person to person. I think everybody's read that. So it's going to have a tendency to work through a classroom quicker than it would have under the old COVID. And so for those couple of reasons, I would advise you guys to consider mandating masks for that reason. I'm going to stop sharing and answer questions for you guys. Hope that was brief enough for you.
That was great. Thank you very much. So first, questions from school committee. Leah.
Scott, so the numbers that we see are just Falmouth residents, is that correct, for our COVID cases?
Yeah, that would all I'd be privy to. I'd have that on the state data. I wouldn't be able to tell you how many cases from any other place.
So we wouldn't know if people who are not residents of Falmouth were contracting and spreading COVID in town?
Correct. So you would see an increase here. Obviously, we're not going to not talk or meet or walk by people from other areas. So you would see the increase in cases in Falmouth as a result of other people being here from other states. But we're not going to. The contact tracing goes back to the jurisdiction in which the person resides. Okay. So yes, there would be more transmission in Falmouth in the summer, and we would have an artificially high number in the winter, actually, because we have snowbirds, right? So the reverse is true. When the snowbirds go down to Florida and they test positive in Florida, it would be a case here that it could be transferred. But with so many cases that we had early in the pandemic, we weren't getting into the business. We were just making sure the person was quarantined, not getting into the number per se. So yeah, there would be. If somebody from Cleveland meets somebody from Texas and they give each other COVID, it's not going to show on the Falmouth data.
Okay.
But there's an ancillary number. So that number would, if we're having, like with the Provincetown, right, there was about 800, about 300 residents. You saw the spike in Provincetown residents because you went from 0 to 300, though the actual number was somewhere around 800. We would see the same thing. An increase in number, and that's a result of just having a lot of people here. I hope that makes sense to you. But you see that with the Provincetown cases.
And just a follow-up, so I don't have the chart in front of me, but just looking at where we are this summer versus last summer.
Well, let's go back. Do you want to go back to it? I can show
Is
you
that
that.
possible?
Yeah, it takes 2 seconds.
Okay.
Yep. So you would see that we have more cases now than we did last summer. By,
Okay.
we were averaging in, let's say 7, and we're now at 20. You had things shut down. We had, a lot of guidance. We had a lot of social distancing measures. We also had a disease that is not as, it didn't have the same ability that Delta has to spread. So, that was our numbers last summer. So you can see, right in that. So we had 1 week that we were above 10, but then we didn't hit 10 again until we got into the fall. So that was our numbers last year.
Okay.
I'm glad I started this chart way back when. Actually,
Great.
one of my board members does it for me. Thanks, man.
Thank you. There's a question from Bill Dorfner.
Scott, I'm not sure if it's too easy or too early to answer this question or not, but I mean, you made the comment about this Delta variant having greater potential to move through a classroom. If a student ended up testing positive within a classroom, do you know what the guidance would be as far as the rest of the students in that classroom?
There's a big document. It would take us a long time to go through, but there's procedures in what we would do for it. Yes.
Okay, but I'm assuming that they would have to quarantine.
Yeah, well, you'd follow it. Yeah, there'd be different guidance. There'd be testing regimes and things of that nature. I have not dug through that, Desi. I have one of my staff members really going through it, and you guys have Jennifer Riesfelder, who would really going to be good on that. And so that you're going to be handling that, and Kathy will help you with that. I haven't digested the entire thing yet, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Bill, I'll just add, I was going to do an update next week at the school committee. We just received the guidance, and they just provided the webinar today.
Yeah. It's going to take a lot for us to digest and go through.
Okay. Andrea, I saw your hand go up.
Thanks, Natalie. Scott, I was wondering about, it was great that you presented the vaccination rates. And I guess in the cases that we're seeing now, I have sort of 2 questions. One is, is there any evidence of breakthrough cases? And the second part to that is, because we're relying on that metric of the positivity rate, does that change with more of our population vaccinated now? Because I know that's based on the number of people who get tested. And I'm wondering, when you have breakthrough cases that are very mild, do people not actually go and get tested? So does that change that rate as we use that rate in the past?
Well, nothing's perfect, but we had asymptomatic people last year without a vaccine that would never have gotten tested either, that may have been able to spread it. Yeah, I mean, if you're not feeling any symptoms, you're not going to run down and get a test. All right, so vaccine breakthrough, to answer your first question, absolutely, vaccine breakthrough. The data that you see out of Israel and the UK, I can tell you is happening here and happening elsewhere. So it's pretty, yeah. So vaccine breakthrough it's not, again, it's not, I think we're at a point now where it's about coexisting and sort of, working our way through it. If the vast majority of vaccinated people end up with a 4-day cold-like symptoms, that's one thing, right? That still tells you the vaccine's working. Okay, that's why the hospitalization part is real critical. You can see in other states where the vaccination rate isn't near 80%, that the hospitalizations have gone through the roof, right? So the vaccine's doing its job. And the way I try to describe it, and Dr. Parker, I hate doing this when I have a doctor in here, but I'm going to try my best to explain it. Here is the level at which you're symptomatic, okay? Old COVID might have started you here, okay? This stuff is going to start you right here. So even with the vaccine, it's not that hard for you to get up to that level. The viral load is higher. The vaccine, your T cells and all the fun stuff that gets in your immune system kicks in, it does its job. But because the virus started at higher load, we don't have any guidance. We don't have social distancing or masking. So the viral load is going to be high. The virus itself is higher, that you start at that symptomatic a lot quicker. And so you'll show symptoms. It's the hospitalization that that the vaccine still be able to keep you below. And that's the best way I can explain it. I hope I did a good job, doctor. So that's why you see more symptomatic. They just generally seem to be mild. Okay. Now, if your immune system didn't take the vaccine, you have immune compromise. That's why today they talked about the third dose. We don't use the term booster because booster kind of thinks of a different type. It's the same vaccine. So you saw some data coming out that the immune compromised can get a third dose. It's because they need that memory and the robustness of the vaccine to keep that from going way up. So,
Terry, I saw your hand go up.
I don't know if Dr. Parkinson's going to talk, but
yes, yep,
he's going to have a separate section. So, but since Scott mentioned him and I've acknowledged him, we're talking physical attributes. Some people are talking about carbon dioxide, whatever it is that monoxide, dioxide. I'm a language major, not a science major. So, is that a problem with mask wearing?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
So maybe I'll just take this chance to chime in. And first of all, thank you, Scott, for that. That data really helps with the clarity of what we're discussing. So just I guess as an opening salvo to put that to risk, that concern to risk, there is no practical concern of mask wearing causing any adverse health problems, period. And in fact, the proof of the pudding is, look how well children were last winter. The rate of illness or among children of serious illness, of flu, of RSV, of all the things that usually we see in the winter, the hospitalization rate for children went way down, right? Probably going to be the lowest on record because of all the distancing and the mask wearing. So that's the evidence. Now, just going back to the more meat and potatoes of what's going on, Scott's presented most of it, so I don't need to add much. I think I would just add a few things. The first principle as we move into schools is obviously safety, but we've learned that a significant second place is to try to have the kids in school, because we're all aware of the detrimental effects of them not being in school last year when they weren't. And even though, I think our district and a lot of the other districts did a really good job of trying to be there as much as possible. And then the third principle would be trying to have the kids do as many of the things that they like to do and that keep them healthy physically and emotionally. And so that's what guides me in what I recommend. What you have to balance that against is, as people have discussed, is this increased transmissibility of the Delta variant and the potential for immunized people to get and then spread the virus. And I'm a little bit concerned that, we're playing by last year's rules and the virus is playing by this year's rules. And what I mean by that is pretty good evidence that COVID was difficult to transmit in schools this year, last year, excuse me, with the variants that were around. The way this one spreads, it's certainly more transmissible. It's hearing transmission within, a daycare or what have you, just makes my suspicions heightened as to the potential for what we have to watch out for. As I say, at the same time, you want kids to be able to do things. And so to me, the balance of that is, the kids did really well with masks. I think kids did better than adults with masks. I don't think anybody you talk to that's around children would question that. And so, by wearing masks indoors, I think it opens the door to being able to hopefully be outside, to have sports, to have a lot of the regular things, and most importantly, to be in person. So that's, I think, That's really all that I wanted to communicate. And maybe the last point is that I do have this unproven suspicion that the case rate is lower than is actual, not just because asymptomatic people won't get tested, which of course they didn't last year and they wouldn't this year, but because people with minor illness who are vaccinated are under the false perception that they can't or that they won't get it.
Great, thank you for that. Scott, is there something you'd like to add to that?
And you know, what you start out with this year is not necessarily what you end up with this year. You know, if we don't get a case for I'd love to have to say this, but if we don't get a case, if we look like we did in June with 3 for the entire year, then you make a decision to change it, and you'll have to. My favorite buzzword is pivot. You pivot back and forth, or you go with the ebb and flow as what's happening. You know, so it's not like a final decision that has to last forever either.
Great, thank you. Are there any additional questions from the school committee? Kelly.
Mine's not actually a question, but just a very brief comment that, you know, I so appreciate the amount of work that you are both putting into this. And, you know, I was very happy back in the months when we didn't have anyone at our meetings because it was just going so wonderfully. And I recognize that you're both running a marathon here, but we're really grateful that you're sticking with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Kelly. Andrea, I saw your hand go up as well.
And I know we want to get to public comment, so I'll just try to keep this brief and save things for next week. But Dr. Parkinson, I was wondering if you could briefly address, I've been reading some things, but I'd like to hear your opinion on some of the issues that they're seeing, because I think a lot of people think that COVID doesn't really affect children very much. Even if they get it, you know, they bounce right back. But then we've been hearing the pieces of long COVID in children specifically. And I was wondering if you had any current information on that.
Well, you know, long COVID can happen in children as in adults. For anyone that's not familiar with it, sort of a, you know, once you get over the actual illness, this sort of foggy fatigue condition. You know, I think my bigger concern, Andrea, is evidence of children having more severe illness with the Delta variant. It's still not high, but, you know, as I said at the start of my remarks, that, you know, hospitalization rates for children last year were lower probably than they've ever been, you know, in modern times. You know, when you compare that to what's happening now in states with low vaccination rates, the pediatric ICUs are now overflowing, not just the adult ones. And so I do have a significant concern that if the new variant is doing that, and we have a significant population that can't be immunized yet, that they are at more risk for those problems.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the school committee? Okay, seeing none. I now would like to open up to the public for any questions that you may have for either Scott or Dr. Parkinson. First, I see Terry Alves Hunter. There you are.
Okay.
Hi, Terry.
Hi. I just have a couple of comments that I'd like to make to them and to whoever else is listening. We live in a society that you have to wear a seatbelt because it's a safety issue. You have to wear shirt and shoes to go in a store. And our most valued resource that's priceless is our children, especially for this community. And where the fact that children of color, people of color, have a higher incidence of contracting regular COVID, and personally having experienced a family member with COVID and long COVID, and having a coworker who was vaccinated by Moderna and still got COVID and gave it to her 2-year-old grandson. and she had a medically special needs daughter who had a feeding tube who had to be given to another home for the quarantine period. And I think Falmouth did an excellent job last year of keeping children safe. As a parent of a special needs child, you know, I had to work all summer to get my son used to wearing a mask. And I think the kids are used to wearing a mask. And if anybody doesn't think that our children's safety should come first, I think we need to question that. And so I wanted to ask the doctor, have you noticed that there is a higher incidence in children of color? And how that could affect it even more? Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
I think, you know, the numbers locally aren't enough to be able to make a sort of valid statement, but I don't think there's any question that nationally, you know, the reports have been that you know, people of color are overrepresented in cases and underrepresented in care and overrepresented in severity.
Okay, thank you for that. Next is parent. If you could tell us your name, that would be appreciated. You're just listed as parent for us.
Hi, my name is Monet. So I have quite a few concerns because I listen to this and I hear the facts. But when we speak numbers, we're not speaking about just direct numbers towards children. According to the CDC, as of yesterday, only 354 children have actually died from COVID. And when you look at the numbers, that is a very, very, 0.000001%. Our children's health is absolutely number one. But the way in which our immune systems work is that they need to be exposed to different bacteria and viruses in order for their immune systems to create the antibodies, the T cells, and everything they need. And when they stated that there is no evidence of negative impacts of masks, I've actually researched it extensively and have found out there is multiple causes. Anxiety causes shortness of breath. They're finding cardiac issues with it, as well as with brain fog and clarity issues. Focus, more depression is higher with children who are being masked for 8 hours a day. People are able to go out to a restaurant and eat and take their masks off, yet we're expecting our children to be able to focus when they have a mask on their face for 8 hours sitting at a desk by themselves. I, as a parent, do not agree with the mask situation because it is a virus and it's going to continue to mutate. And the only way that our children are going to be able to become better, their health is going to be able to be able to, handle with these viruses is if they're exposed to it, right? Because that's what we need to do for, like they say, the herd immunity. And so as a parent, I have 5 children and I have multiple other parents all summer long that our children have been out in close quarters, sharing ice creams, doing all of this. And there's been zero cases. When you look at those numbers of cases that are being reported, how many are of children? That's one of my questions. How many are, being of children? I do not think that masks should be on our children. I do believe it is.
Sorry, that's the 2-minute line mark. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Okay, thank you, Moni. Let's let the doctor and Scott address some of your concerns that you stated.
Yeah, I just don't think that's the prevailing medical knowledge, and the idea of allowing children to get this infection as a way of controlling the epidemic is also just not felt to be the safest and most effective way to get through this epidemic.
Okay, thank you. Julie Huber, I hope I said your last name correctly. You're next.
That's correct. Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Great. I just wanted to support the CDC guidance, which was very clear that the CDC recommends universal indoor masking by all students, staff, teachers, and visitors to K-12 schools, regardless of vaccination status. I think we should heed that advice. If you look at the numbers Scott showed, the vaccination rate from about 0 to 19-year-old is about 40%. So we're talking about bringing upwards of 1,000 kids plus who are unvaccinated into an indoor setting. So I just really want to urge the school committee and all of the schools to follow CDC guidance and mask up our students. Let's get the school year off healthy. And as Scott said, we can reevaluate in a few months and see where we are. So thanks.
Great, thank you, Julie. Amy Leonardi.
Could I just, sorry,
yes.
Amy, I just want to interject that 239 children per day were hospitalized with COVID in the United States between August 3rd and August 9th.
Can I add something? I kind of look
I'm
at.
Sorry, Dr. Parkinson. What was the 239 children per day were hospitalized during which period?
August 3rd through 9th this year.
Thank you.
If I may, I kind of look at it from the big picture. The last thing you want to do is have an outbreak where all of a sudden somebody's grandparents who might be, not in great shape, get it because of an outbreak. So there's another thing too, right? You can kick it upstairs to anybody. The virus really doesn't care, who gets it from the child. So, I mean, an outbreak inside a school and we have 8 or 10 children might end up being 23 cases and 2 of them are, immune compromised or in tough shape or weren't vaccinated for whatever reason. So there's also that, thing going on as well, right? So it's just what my comments on it. Because it's not something, it's definitely stuff I've seen in the past doing contact tracing.
Great, thank you for that. Amy Leonardi, back to you. I apologize for the delay.
Thank you so much, Scott and Dr. Parkinson. Thank you for all the work that you've been doing, all the data you've been tracking, and all the feedback. You make a couple great points. Both of you mentioned some keywords. Scott, you mentioned coexisting with this new way. And Dr. Parkinson, you mentioned, this changing variant, and we always have to be able to pivot. And just because we start with one thing or go in one direction doesn't mean at any time that the schools can't pivot. So I think that's a crucial point. As a parent, it would be really useful. I happen to know the summer statistics for COVID within the staff and the schools for students at the summer program was 0. But I would be interested as we go into the school year if you guys could be able to give feedback on that stat, as well as were there any cases within the town rec programs or other summer camps or programs. It would just be useful data. I know you guys track a lot of data, but that would be really useful to have to see where those percentages are at, because a lot of those programs, I think with the exception of the rec, were unmasked, including our own program. My only question would be, Dr. Parkinson, you highlighted the importance of being outside. I really appreciate that. You know how passionate I am about the outdoor learning project. I was wondering if you guys could maybe give a recommendation on your thoughts of a ratio if you're, it would be better for them to be outside and unmasked. And so is there a ratio, maybe suggestion that you could kind of give feedback for what that could be for our students in the schools?
Wow, Amy, you have a much higher opinion of my ability to generate data than I do. But I think I would say that, the point being that, yes, outside does seem to be significantly safer than inside, and that the district and everybody that's doing these things is trying to plan in such a way that maximizes that. So whatever number we come up with in terms of what's ideal really is only as good as what you're able to implement practically in the world. And I think that as you know better than anybody, doing that outdoor stuff is awesome, and so hopefully more of that can happen.
Great, thank you. Martha Hoff.
Hi there. Thanks so much for giving me the chance to talk. I am already nervous because I have a kindergartner entering Mullen Hall this fall. And so, this is all exacerbating our anxiety a little bit. But So I am a biologist by training, so I really have been paying careful attention to the data. I would just like to point out, we know now that we think the rho value, which is the number of people who are infected for every single person who catches the virus, that person will infect another 7 people, which is, much higher than the previous variants. Obviously, I'm concerned that my little kiddo is going to catch COVID, especially because we are starting to see new sort of nerve-wracking symptoms and conditions evolving in long COVID. But one thing I haven't heard people, well, actually, a few people have pointed out some of the social justice issues inherent in this decision. I think, in May, June, we all thought we were on a very good trajectory, and surprise, we are not on as great of a trajectory as we thought we were. So imagine then if we send our kids back to school unmasked and things continue to get worse and we end up having to shut the schools down. So for a parent like me, that's going to be a really huge struggle. We're going to have to juggle with our work schedules. There are some parents and families for whom that is a almost impossibility. So I'd like us to sort of keep in mind our students who are less privileged, who don't have good alternate options if the schools have to shut down. If these schools do have to shut down because we don't want the temporary inconvenience of masking, that would be a real tragedy in terms of losing yet another long period of in-person learning. So I just want us to keep in mind the potential even worse situation that could befall us if we don't take the step of masking now. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much, Martha. Esther. Hi, Esther. You're still muted. Esther? Esther, what we'll do is we'll go to the next. Oh, there you are. Okay. Oh, she put her hand down. Okay, so let's move on. And Esther, if you want to come back and join the queue. Oh, there you are. I see you at the bottom. We'll move to Kari Freitag, please. Hi, Kari. Let's try it this way. Kari, could you unmute yourself?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you. Hi, Kari.
It's kind of complicated to figure out how to unmute yourself. I just wanted to point that out.
Okay.
I wanted to just ask a question. Perhaps the doctor can answer this, or perhaps the biologist who's with us. The testing that we're talking about is the PCR testing, where they are running a number of cycles to find the accuracy is, it goes down as the cycles are higher. And I wanted to know how many cycles are they running to find out whether people are positive or not. So I read that the manufacturer says that 17 cycles is all it takes to get 100% accuracy. And after that, the accuracy drops rapidly, and that now we're just finding pieces of DNA that are not, it's not a living virus, it's not an active virus anymore. And so if they're running 40 cycles, I just wonder how accurate this testing is, and if maybe the positivity rate is not accurate.
Yeah, thank you, Scott.
I can try. That's way above my pay grade. I did not do well in lab. So, you know, the whole lab thing, I don't know the answer, but to just comment that a PCR will pick up dead viral particles, or inactive is a better word, viral particles. It's the reason why we don't. We started off back March of 2020, people couldn't go back to work unless they had a negative test, and they found that they just never were testing negative for months. So I'm sure nothing is 100%, but that question is not something I can answer. I know Dr. Katie Brown at DPH could. If you want to email me, I could email Dr. Brown. She's the state's expert and epidemiologist, and who I have in contact once in a while with. So if you want to submit that to me on an email, I could get your response. But that's a little sciencey for my abilities. I'm not in the lab.
Thank you, Scott. Deb Berglund. Berglund. Hi, Deb.
Hi, Natalie. Thanks for giving me a chance to speak. I appreciate you all having this forum because I think it's really important. You know, I also fully support the CDC guidelines around masking. Oh, forgive the plane over my head. I live near the base. I think that masking is really just part of being a good community citizen right now. I think, you know, we have immunocompromised staff and students in our schools. We have vaccine hesitant folks in our schools, and masking feels like the least that we can do for our community to care for one another and to keep us all safe. And as somebody who has a student in the high school who happens to be a fairly anxious student, she is very anxious about the idea of going back without masks if we're going back at full capacity. And so she's somebody who actually would feel much safer going back into the school, knowing that the schools are following CDC guidelines. So I fully support that going forward.
Great, thank you, Deb. Next, Lauren McMenemy.
Hi, yes, can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes, hi. My name is Michael O'Brien, and this is my wife, Lauren O'Brien. Just like to say good evening to Superintendent Dorr and the committee members, and we thank you for the opportunity to address our concerns about masking our children. We have 3 children currently at the North Falmouth Elementary School, and we employ you on behalf of our children to discontinue the mask requirement that they've had to endure for the entire school year last year. We are now 18 months out from the beginning of the coronavirus, and we all know so much more at this point than we initially did. What science tells us is that our children are at such slight risk of this virus that it barely poses a risk to their health. But what we do know is that the cloth masks are ineffective and germy. Our children deserve to breathe fresh air, unimpeded at every minute of the day. This is their God-given birthright. Our children deserve to see their friends smile at them. They deserve to see children and teachers frown at them. This is how they learn to be appropriate humans functioning in a normal society. My kindergartner deserves to see her teacher's mouth move as she learns her sounds, the building blocks in learning how to read. In the past 18 months, our lives have been completely changed. The idea that we have to argue for our children to breathe unencumbered is completely preposterous. Let us not teach our children that there cannot be any risk taken in life, that you always have to eliminate any risk. Life is about taking risks. It's about being courageous and brave. Every single day when we leave our houses, we take a risk. Let us be brave enough to have our children take a risk and go to school with their bare faces. What is the worst that can happen? They maybe get sick from a virus that has a childhood survival rate of approximately 100% in the state of Massachusetts. At this point, any teacher that so desired has been vaccinated. The teachers have taken the steps to safeguard their health and what they believed was best for them. If teachers want, let them wear their masks. We implore you to make the brave decision here, to do what does not seem politically correct and discontinue this game of charades and constantly moving goalposts. What looks clear at this point in time is that the virus is not going anywhere. There are outbreaks amongst the vaccinated in the middle of the summer. You, Dr. Dorr, can choose to do the predictable, faint-hearted decision of masking our kids for the foreseeable future, or you can make the courageous pronouncement to send our kids to school without such cloth costumes for theater. You can actually make a direct impact on their young lives at this moment. I assume—
Sorry, it's at 2 minutes. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It's at 2 minutes.
Daniel, thank you for your feedback. We were at 2 minutes, and we just really need to stick to 2 minutes so everyone has a chance to be heard. But thank you. We did hear your feedback. Thank you on that.
Natalie,
next,
can I just add one thing? If people haven't finished their thoughts on within our 2 minute time frame, that they are more than welcome to email the committee and give us their full thought if it doesn't fit into the 2 minute guidance.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Connor Long.
Actually, it's Connor's my son. He apparently had used my phone.
Oh. you.
My name is Matthew.
Hi,
I've been hearing a lot about, the safety for the children and all this. Unfortunately for my family, there were numerous headaches when they were wearing masks. My daughter got some kind of gastrointestinal problem that doctors couldn't figure out, and it only resolved after school ended, 2 weeks after school ended. I hear about 239 cases. How many died? In what geographic area was that? We can throw out lots of numbers and say everything's for the safety of the children, but my kids, they weren't healthy last year. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Connor. Kelly, I see your hand up.
Yeah, his comment jogged my mind that, we have a lot of people on the call, more than we usually do. And I would love to hear if there are any students that are logged on. I particularly would like to hear from them. And so I just want to encourage you, if you're a student, to put your hand up.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Kelly. Bethany McNeil, please. Hi, Bethany.
Hey, good evening, everyone. This is actually her husband, Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
I had two thoughts on it, and I think everyone brings up some good points. I do want to echo the gentleman too before me, where if we're just looking at the rational data here. The kids are low risk, the vaccinated are low risk. So, what really are we doing with the masks here? I mean, the only people really at high risk now are the unvaccinated, and most of those are by choice. We're talking about the vaccinated population that, or the unvaccinated population that could get the vaccine if they choose. So that's one question. I mean, if we're trying to protect two low risk people here. The other thing is the mental health of the kids. I mean, my kids are in elementary school. They started out, they absolutely loved school. By the end of the year last year, they were so depressed. They didn't meet any friends. It was really sad to see. They really lacked, social interactions, and, having the masks again and social distancing is really tough. Makes us think about, keeping our kids out of school for the next year. And so I really hope we can, make the right decision here and let the kids go mask free.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Esther, I see you're back. Hi, Esther. Let's see. Are you able to unmute yourself? Let's see.
Yes, hello.
Okay, there you are. Hi, Esther.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Okay, so I have two young girls. I am not in favor of the masks. Here's why. We're talking about a virus here. A virus, supposedly this virus came from, escapes this level 4 biolab, but then my daughter's cheetah print mask stops it? No. It's like putting up a chain link fence for mosquito. So, and I agree with that other gentleman. I forget his name. My kids had a lot of breathing problems with the mask on. I did. And I was walking around with an N95 mask. And I don't know. I'm not buying it anymore. I'm seeing a lot of data that's not matching what I originally looked at. And now I'm finding more data and it's not matching. And here's part of the other thing that I don't understand is that the CDC had estimated for the years 2018 to 2019, the flu season, that 3 times as many kids died from the flu. It's something like 680. So that's 3 times more kids died from the flu than COVID. But where was the board mandating masks then, or anybody? Nobody was. So I'm really confused by the whole mask mandate for COVID when it's 3 times less and the children are at less risk. So I'm not a fan for the masks at all. That's all I wanted to say. But thank you. Thank you for your all time.
Thank you, Esther. Either Dr. Parkinson or Scott, would you like to speak to some of the data surrounding the flu and children and masks that was just shared?
I think I would just highlight that 0% of children under 12 are immunized. And I think that every parent of a special needs child with significant health compromise would have a shiver run down their spine at the thought of not having the community help to protect them.
Great, thank you. Next, Jane E. Hi, Jane.
Hi, it's actually, you said you wanted to hear from the children, so I have a little one on here. So
that's great, thank you.
They can't hear you, honey.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Bella.
Hi, Bella. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
And what grade are you going into?
I'm going into 3rd grade.
Oh, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Thanks.
So what do you want to share? Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I just really don't like masks.
Okay.
They annoy me a lot.
Thank you, Bella. That was very brave for you to speak up. I appreciate that.
You want to say? Oh, well, wasn't very helpful. But as a parent, I agree that for the safety reasons that I think masks are important to some degree, but my feelings are like, when is it going to end? So, but we will take the medical advice of Dr. Parkinson. So we trust him, and that's all we have to say.
Well, thank you very much. And I appreciate Bella speaking. This is big for a little kid, so thank you. Next is Laura. Hi, Laura.
Hi. Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are. Hi, we can hear you.
I was trying to get my daughter to help me unmute. But, so my biggest concern is I am not a mask supporter. I do wear a mask, sometimes 16 hours a day at my work. That's not going away. I do work in healthcare. I don't think that's going away anytime soon in healthcare, whether we're vaccinated or not. But my daughter, who's going into the 3rd grade, she didn't want to speak. She doesn't like to speak in front of people. But she struggled last year with anxiety and masks and was told by the town, I was told when I asked, what about if she can't wear it? And I was basically ignored and then said that she had to do a remote for the year, which was a disaster, as we all know. My biggest question is, if we do decide to mask, which it kind of sounds like that's where we're going with these experts, then what is the solution going to be for children who still actually struggle with this anxiety and things like that? I know my older son, he did okay with it, but there are children that still struggle with that. No matter how much we've tried, no matter what we've done, it just seems like there's no solution and there's no end, ever. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Laura. And Lori, would you like to speak to her concern about a child and masking and concerns with masking or any issues with that?
I really don't know what to say. We certainly have lots of supports for students experiencing anxiety. I think Dr. Woodward could at some point share and expand on that. Do you want us to take time to do that now?
Why don't you, Joan, if you could very briefly just speak to that, and then we can expand upon that next week.
Certainly. And again, I think the further discussion for tonight and what we discuss next week will provide greater clarity with the guidance that we're continuing to get. But for some of the social emotional concerns, the anxiety, the masks, I've spoken at other school committee meetings regards to the services that we do have in place. I believe I've spoken about the additional benchmark testing that we're going to do with our DESA and all of our social emotional learning curriculum that will be happening in there. But for students that have even more significant needs and concerns with our counseling staff over last year and this coming year, we are increasing the amount of school adjustment counselors that we have. So we also have some outside resources Our staff will also be working with McLean Hospital to continue to work on training, helping to mitigate the impact that we saw with COVID last year and what we may be walking into this year. So those are some of the things, very briefly, those are some of the things that we do have in place. So we can certainly get you more specific information for next week as well.
Great, thank you, Joan. And yes, we will expand upon that next week. Scott, I see your hand going up.
Can I be an optimist for a change?
Yes, please. I love optimism.
Delta will end and the cases will go down. We're all floating on the same rock, so we need to get everybody in this world vaccinated. Otherwise, you're going to have new variants. That's, I was on call saying everything looks great. The only thing that could go wrong is a variant, and Delta came up. The Delta will work its course in several months. And when that happens, the cases, obviously, barring something new, I think this would, if your decision is to go with masks, then that could be very temporary based on, I can have a conversation with the group that we meet on Friday and say, look, we haven't had a case in 2 weeks. What are we doing? And we can go on and off. So I'm just saying with Delta, it's just a little bit different. It's not anything that you think about COVID, sort of pre-July. It's different. And Dr. Parkinson had said that it's just different now. And, so that's, sort of my 2 cents on that. So.
Great. Thank you. Next is Teresa Zazo.
Hello.
Hi, Teresa.
I am the music teacher at Mullen Hall. I am also a parent. I have 2 children in the Falmouth Public School system. And I just wanted, since Dr. Parkinson was on here, I wanted to bring up we all know the CDC guidelines. We all know the DESE guidelines. The Massachusetts Music Educators Guidance offers a little bit of their own guidance for indoors. And it reads, masking with appropriate material remains the best way of reducing potential infected aerosol from circulating in an indoor space. Masks are recommended to be worn while singing and speaking. And for me, as a music teacher last year, the protocols were pretty extreme. I was outside almost every day. We had to be 10 feet apart, wearing masks in order to sing. And the idea of being inside a classroom and singing with children without a mask is so far different from what I was doing last year, according to the guidelines. And I just was wondering what Dr. Parkinson was thinking in the idea of singing as opposed to just speaking with masks.
Great, thank you. Dr. Parkinson.
It's a really good question, and it's one that I think it's one of the hardest ones to get your head around for the people that make the final decisions on these things, that in terms of there being increased risk with singing, I think that's been documented, but it kind of goes back to what Scott said and what's the rate of illness at the time. And, the masks, the special masks for people playing instruments, provide some degree of a middle ground with that. I think first thing we do is tip our hats to those of you that stood outside all year and sang 10 feet apart facing, that's definitely, you get the Perseverance Award for that. I think that the principle is that we want to get to a point where people can sing indoors in a 2019 way. That's obviously the goal. We want to get to a point where everything can be done indoors, in a 2019 way. I think Scott put it very well. We have to see where we're at a given time, and we make a certain set of recommendations, whether it's for music or for sports or for lunch or any of the other difficult, subjects. And then we see how we do. And if we're improving, then we continue to loosen it. Or, it's obviously not my decision, it's the school board's decision and the superintendent. But if things are getting better, we continue to allow more things done. If things start to go backwards, then we have to go the other direction.
Great, thank you for that. Scott, I just missed you.
Yeah, I'm talking off the cuff, sometimes I get in trouble for doing this, but, sometimes looking at masks can get you more towards normal. Look at what's happening in some of the schools down south where they're banging the entire school or half the school out. That's not normal for anybody. I think if masks do lessen the spread, then you have more normal among all children, as opposed to losing, grades or a lot of other things. So since you're not doing cohorts and a lot of the other intricate things that we were doing last year, if it does help sort of prevent some of the spread, then I think you have more normal for more people with the mask on than maybe, you know what I'm saying, having sort of what you're seeing down south. I don't know if that makes sense of what I'm saying too. There might be a level of normalcy that's more normal because you got the mask on, and all you got to do is deal with the mask, as opposed to, dealing with 213 cases at the high school in, in a week or something of that nature. So that's another way to look at it.
Yeah, thank you. Alyssa Foster.
Hello.
Hi.
I am in favor of a mask mandate personally. I live in a multi-generational household, and we are concerned about the fact that there is no option apparently for remote learning. We were hoping to keep our daughter out of school for the first month and to see how well the school system deals with outbreaks and whatnot. Especially since she's my daughter is under 12 and she can't be vaccinated, and I also have a 4-year-old at home. Is there going to be any chance for remote learning, or was that just completely vetoed? I know this is not exactly the purview of this meeting, but I just didn't have anywhere else to go for this information.
Sure. Thank you for the question. Dr. Dorr?
There will be no remote learning this year. DESE has stated that students are expected to be in school full-time, 5 days a week, and no remote learning option.
Okay, thank you. April. I don't have your last name. I just see April on the screen.
I'm not allowed to let her speak right now because she's using an older version of Zoom.
Okay. Okay, April, we will come back to you. Scott Bennett.
Hi, this is Joanna Bennett. That is not a picture of me.
Hi, Joanna.
I just wanted to chime in. I have a son who's going to be a kindergartner at Mullen Hall. We're very excited for him to begin attending. Obviously, this year does not look the way that I think any parent hoped it would. I think we all had really high hopes that we would sort of be out of the woods, and clearly we aren't. I'm feeling really distressed at some of the comments on this call for two reasons. Number one, I'm hearing a lot of parents saying how this isn't dangerous for children. We're only seeing so many cases for children, which is inaccurate. But let's say that that's true. We're a community and we are responsible to each other. And we know that our community here has a disproportionately high number of elderly. And we are still looking at a virus that is extremely dangerous, particularly to the elderly and particularly to the immunocompromised. And when we're talking about masking our children, we're talking about doing a service to our community. We're talking about protecting our neighbors. We're talking about looking out for each other. We're not here every man for himself. That is not the way that a community functions, and it is not the way for us to get through this. My other concern is the repeated arrogance that I keep hearing from parents. We have experts here on the call. We have Dr. Parkinson, who is my son's physician, who has treated him for Lyme disease, who has seen him for fevers, who has called me back in the middle of the night to tell me what to do. And I trust him and I trust his colleagues to know what is best for my child. If my son had a fever, I would not be looking on the internet or on Facebook for how to treat him. I would be calling his doctor, and his doctor would tell me what to do, and I would follow that advice. We have Scott McGann, who has done nothing short of an exemplary job leading our community through this, and he is similarly saying that we should be following the CDC guidelines. I don't think that some cursory
I'm sorry, that's 2 minutes. I'm so sorry.
Sorry, I was muted there. Joanna, as mentioned before, where we are sticking to a 2-minute timeline, please email the rest of your thoughts to the school committee, and we will absolutely hear you and respond. So I apologize for the time limit, but definitely reach out to us via email. Ryan, are you able to promote April, or is she still in the same?
I'm sorry, they're going to have to upgrade on their computer first. I'm not able to technically currently. If they come back after upgrading, we might be able to.
Okay, thank you for this update. Tammy Inman.
Hello.
Hi.
Thanks for having me on, and thank you all for being here. I just wanted to give a little insight into running a preschool and a childcare over this pandemic. This week, ironically, was our first week where we had actual spread within a classroom. We never had a child who was sick at school. It all started with an asymptomatic child. But having 4 children of my own going into the public school system in Falmouth, ages 5, 7, 10, and 12, I am against the masking of the children. I have been running an care facility offering care for infants all the way through 6-year-olds and even some kids almost turning 7 last year. We did not mask the children. We were not required to, as in the language given to us by the state, if they could not put on or remove a mask properly, they did not have to wear it. And in that instance, I don't think I've ever seen an adult properly take it off or on, unless they were in the medical profession. So my pre-K classroom, if I was to compare it to the kindergarten classrooms of last year, where they were not allowed to sing, they were not allowed to touch each other, they were not allowed to pass a ball, they were not allowed to sit in circle together, they were not allowed to eat, they were not allowed to interact. My pre-K classroom did all of those things. They did all of those things every single day. We washed our hands, we bleached like crazy. We kept everyone safe. We didn't have any outbreaks, and I have done my utmost to keep all my families continuously informed. And as someone said earlier, the rate of children being infected is very, very, very low.
I'm so sorry, that's 2 minutes. I'm super sorry.
I was muted again. Thank you, Tammy. Shannon.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for calling on me. I just wanted to add my voice to the pro-mask pile. My daughter is 10. She does not have the ability to protect herself with a vaccine yet. And those wearing masks around her is the best way to protect her, as well as her being masked, from potentially getting seriously ill. So I would say that I am very nervous about the idea of her being in school with unmasked and unvaccinated children. So I wanted to add my name to the pro-mask list. And also I was wondering if you guys were planning on sending out a survey, maybe to get a more comprehensive view. People that might not be here might not be speaking up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Shannon. Lori, would you like to speak to the survey question that was posed?
At this time, we had no plans of sending out a survey. We were opening up this forum so the school committee could hear from the community, as well as we've been receiving emails, school committee, and I've been receiving emails as well that I've collected to make sure we add to. So I would suggest that people email their input at this point.
Great, thank you. Amy, I see your hand is up again. We can promote you. Hi, Amy. Do you have anything new to add to the discussion?
No, that was an accident. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. Okay, thanks. Kevin Pimentel.
Sorry, Kevin also is using an older version of Zoom. Kevin, if you can hear me, if you could try to upgrade and come back in maybe a few minutes, we'll be able to allow you to speak.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Ms. Messer is next.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
My name is Marisha Messer, and I am a teacher. I have been a teacher in Falmouth for 24 years. And I just would like to reassure some people who feel that there are a lot of concerns about their children masking. We obviously were terrified about having the kids masked when we were heading back to school last August and had multiple questions about how it was going to roll out. And I have to say, at the elementary level, it was really pretty seamless. And the kids really did extraordinarily well with it. I'm sure that there were children who found it uncomfortable. It was difficult, there's no question, but I think the children did far better with it than any of us did. And I will also add that the biggest disruption was not the masks. It was when a classroom had to go out and be quarantined because of potential exposure. We need to keep each other safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Terry, I know that you spoke earlier. Terry Alexander, do you have anything new to add?
There's just one thing I wanted to add. I was at the DESE meeting regarding this summer. It was very emotional. I mean, parents were banging on tables, trying to break through the door. And they were, like here, not mask or to mask. And I think, I understand what everybody's saying. But when I hear that fatalities are low, I'd like to address those people that for the parent whose child that's died or has got severely sick from COVID, you can't say that. This is an infectious disease.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you, Terry. April, I believe you are still using an older version of Zoom. Ryan, please correct me if I'm wrong.
Nope, she's upgraded.
Oh, great. Okay. Hi, April, you upgraded. Hi. Are you able to unmute yourself?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, hi. Hi, April.
How you doing? I want to say that I am fully against the mask as being a mandate. I believe that we should make it a personal choice on a family level. Parents and children should be able to communicate. Obviously, the parents would have the lead of their children if they want them to wear them, and maybe sign a waiver if they choose not to have their child wear a mask so they can go to school without it. My children had terrible years at school last year. I have one in middle school, one in elementary school, and their learning was stunted. Not being able to communicate with their teachers, even when they were in the classroom, they weren't getting the attention that they should have from the teachers. You can't pick up facial cues with a mask on. They go to lunch, they put them back on, they have crumbs, they have other things on their mouths, and they're inhaling that all day. Anyone who's seen someone wearing one of these masks out in the cold can see that your breath goes right through it. So the vapors are going through. So healthy people that are wearing the masks, this doesn't do anything to stop the spread of people that are asymptomatic. Someone who's sick and coughing, yeah, it's going to keep the phlegm from coming out of the mask, but they shouldn't be at school anyways. Infection rates all around went down in school last year because parents that would normally dose their kid with Tylenol and then send them to school because they have a fever were actually keeping them home because they were afraid of this virus and that maybe they had it and that they didn't want to give it to someone else. Not like when they send them to school with the flu, because it's just the flu or just strep throat or just something that they haven't gone to the doctors yet, but I can't afford to stay home today with my child, so I'm going to send them to school on medicine to bring their fever down, so they have to be there. So we had a big shift in that helped people not get sick. Last year, I didn't hear from my kids, anyone saying that someone was in school and threw up or had a fever and said they were sick all day. It didn't happen. Every previous year, you always had that, at least once a week, every other week. The masks now are more of a placebo, so it looks like something is being done when really it doesn't help but it makes you feel good. It's a security blanket, but it's a false security blanket.
I'm so sorry, you're at 2 minutes. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, April. So being cognizant of everyone's time, I just want to, we don't have any more hands up, but if you do have any follow-up questions or concerns that you think of, oh, Connor, I believe Connor, you spoke earlier. Was Connor the person who needed to update?
No, that was Kevin Pimentel, I believe.
Okay, sorry, I'm just trying to keep.
Natalie, I'm sorry
Yes.
to interrupt you. I'm just wondering if maybe Dr. Parkinson could speak to just the last comment, just as a doctor, around, does the mask actually protect students?
Yes, it does. As you know, I mentioned earlier, the rate of illness among children last year from things other than COVID was strikingly lower than it's been any other winter. And part of that's going to be distancing and part of that's going to be masking.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, you're fine. You're absolutely fine. I'm going to, because I see 3 new people, we're going to stop after these 3, and then I will share the email address and you can send us any additional comments or concerns. So Connor Long.
Again, that's my son. My name is Matthew.
Sorry, Matthew. Oh, we did hear from you. So, you know, out of respect for everyone's time, if we could just keep it to 1 comment at this point, because we are a little over, but you can definitely share your thoughts with us via email. And at the end of this meeting, I will share our email address for anyone who's listening.
People go on more than once.
So now to Dave.
Hello.
Hi, Dave.
Hi. I'm wondering if there's any room for compromise in this, where my son was in school last year in the classroom, and then they would take their mask off for lunch. So my feeling is maybe if the masks are worn on the bus and anytime they're in a common area, and then when they're, you know, in their classroom where they end up taking their mask off for a half hour to eat lunch, you know, why can't they, while in the classroom, keep their mask off?
Okay, thank you. Next is Julie Fitzpatrick.
Sorry, we're running into the same old Zoom issue with Julie.
And then we will end with, on my screen, looks like D here. If you could promote yourself and tell us your name.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Dehir, and I'm a student at Falmouth High School. And I would like to say that I'm in support of masks, because I would feel safer, like in a classroom, if everyone was wearing a mask. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here and you're giving us your feedback. Julie Fitzpatrick.
That was the person.
Oh, that was the other. Okay,
great.
So seeing no new names, I would like to share our email address. And again, if you have any questions or comments that come to you or items that you don't feel were addressed this evening, please send your thoughts to us. And it's schoolcommittee@Falmouth, K12, MA.US. And so I would just like to thank everyone for being here, and we look forward to hearing your feedback. And next week, the school committee will have this item as another agenda item, and we'll be taking a vote at that time as to how to proceed with opening our schools.
A quick question, Natalie.
Yes.
Will Dr. Parkinson be with us next week? Because I just had a couple of questions, actually just one real question, but I'm happy to hold it until next week.
Which would you prefer? Do you want to just ask it quickly now, or?
So I'm a healthcare provider, and I just wanted Dr. Parkinson to speak to the fact that children, what is your professional opinion on children's somewhat natural immunity to the COVID-19 coronavirus? I know that children under 12 are not, we are not approving vaccines for them at this time. I have a child under 12. I appreciate all of this. I would like you as our district physician to speak to children's I guess I just don't want parents to feel like because they're not vaccinated that their child is like flailing around out in the wind. And this is not a comment on either side of mask wearing or not mask wearing. I'm just looking for our physicians' comments on that.
I think thanks, Melissa. I think there's every reason to remain calm, that all these decisions should be made as calmly as possible. The data from last year suggested for average healthy children that the risk was very low. It is higher than it was with the Delta variant. Still the majority of children that get COVID have what you would consider mild illness. And so that is good. The ones that don't, those are the ones, of course, that get the attention. They're the ones we worry about. They're the ones we lose sleep over when we're trying to plan and make policy. People did a very good job last year with getting through a tremendously difficult year. And they did it through through all of the measures that have been brought up tonight. As Scott mentioned, some of those measures have been relaxed. The hope is to be able to relax more when, hopefully, as he says, this variant, I'm holding him to this, that this variant is going to eventually diminish, and that we can resume more normal activity than we start with. But I think, we always have people be cautious and to continue to do things, but I don't think they have to live in fear as long as we take appropriate steps.
Awesome. Scott.
I'm only under contract for 2 variants. So COVID and 2 variants, I'm not doing this anymore. So I'm just letting you all know.
Fair enough. We appreciate that. Terry.
Since you gave the people who are listening today the email address, I would like us to make a proactive call out to teachers and students to send us emails. Let's hear from them. We didn't hear from enough teachers tonight. And so let's target those 2 groups.
Yep, I love that idea. So yes, teachers and students, that's very great. We'd love to hear from you. Okay, Melissa, I thought Melissa was going to ask something else. Okay, so once again, thank you all for joining us. This has been really informative and helpful. And again, just to reiterate, the school committee will meet next week to make a decision as to our potential masking requirements for the opening of the year. So at this point, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Melissa eagerly seconds. Okay, and so we're on Zoom, so it's going to be a roll call vote, and everybody just shifted, which is great for me. Kelly Welch.
Welch, yes.
Melissa Keefe.
Melissa Keefe, yes.
Bill Ryder.
Ryder, yes.
Andrea Thorold.
Andrea Thorold, yes.
Leah Palmer.
Leah Palmer, yes.
Bill Dorfner.
Yes.
Terry Medeiros.
Terry Medeiros, yes.
Lisa Hart.
Lisa Hart, yes.
And Natalie Kanopoulos, I'm also a yes. So thank you again and have a wonderful evening. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.